Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to be talking to one of our winners of the Customer of the Year Awards, PSS USA, and with Rimas and Jenny. And so I'm glad you're able to join us and hear about what they've done to make their program a success. I'm just going to share my screen. So, welcome to today's pro tip session. This is another customer spotlight on PSS Life University. We're going to learn about how they built up their university and increase their outreach to their community. So, if you're doing anything where you're looking to increase your outreach to any kind of community based, to any kind of unusual, or not even unusual, but maybe atypical learners, people maybe you don't always think of as doing online learning. These guys have a lot of really great lessons for you to learn from. So today's guest speakers are Jenny Pisani. She's the Director of Lifelong Learning at PSS USA, and Rimas Jason, who's the Chief Executive Officer of PSS USA. And they're both here to tell us about their mission, their goals, and the challenges that they faced and how they've done that. So, let's start with the basic questions. Could you please tell us about what you're doing at PSS USA?
Sure, and thanks for having us, Caitlin. We're both, honored and a little bit humbled to be speaking about our experiences with CYPHER, which have been phenomenal. So, a little bit about PSS. We're a 501c3 nonprofit multi-service organization in New York City. We've been around for over 60 years now. We operate 10 older adult centers. We've built 2 senior apartments. We have a caregiver program, case management programs, 311 program, and then we have Life University. And we operate out of 15 different locations with close to 120 staff. And our mission is to build the capacity of older New Yorkers and their families to thrive. And so when you think about building capacity, a lot of what we do is education and information. And so we've been providing that since our origins at our different centers, our apartments, at community centers, and then online.
Wow.
So
That's I love that outreach. I think that's so important to give people that extra push through the rest of their life, make it a little bit more meaningful and a little bit more connected. Can you tell us about some of the challenges that you were facing before you got CYPHER, before a few years ago?
sure. Um, so as I said, we've been doing educational programs at all of our different locations. The 15 locations we had, plus other community partners, et cetera, would invite us in to do classes and workshops and trainings. And then in about 2017, we put all of those programs under one umbrella, which we called Life University, so that we could offer them together, promote them together, package them, et cetera. Because people aren't just one thing. I might be an older adult, but I also might be a family caregiver for a loved one. I might be somebody planning on retirement, but I also might be interested in classes on health and well-being. So because of that, we wanted to put everything under one umbrella, the Life University umbrella, which allowed us to promote it under that brand and show all of the wide variety of classes that we could provide. And then later, like in 2018, 19, we started to offer some of the things on Zoom. And so we had a pretty good online following, which really made a huge difference when the pandemic hit. We actually thrived during the pandemic because we were still able to offer a lot of programming, information to older adults during the lockdown, et cetera.
Yeah, no, I
But
imagine.
yeah,
But when did you realize you needed to kind of add some more technology to support all this when you needed a learning platform?
exactly. So that's when we realized right around then, in like 2022, 23, we realized we needed a platform to connect everything a little bit better. Because up until that point, somebody signing up for a retirement planning class might not necessarily even make the connection to the class on Social Security that he took the previous week. If I was a caregiver, I might not realize the caregiving classes are offered by the same organization that's doing the financial readiness classes. So we realized we needed a platform to pull all of those together so it wouldn't seem so transactional, so like discrete little
Mhm.
classes, and pull it under one big umbrella, which really what it was. And
Right.
so we started to look for a platform that would do a couple of things. One is create that sense of community, but also help people know that, they could access the resources that they've took in a previous class. They could see how they're doing. They could basically see all of their activities with Life University under one roof.
That makes a
So we
lot of sense.
started looking around
Mhm.
in 2024. Early in 2024, we started um, checking out a number of LMSs and landed on CYPHER after pretty extensive, evaluation process. We really liked what we saw with CYPHER.
Oh,
Um,
that's great to hear. What were you prioritizing? Because again, a lot of LMSs are designed to, for the workplace, for, K through university or whatever. What did you feel you needed specifically to reach the kind of audience you were reaching?
yeah, that's a great question. And that's one of the main things we were looking for is because we were talking about a population that needed a system that was very easy to use. A real easy learner interface was going to be important, number one, because we knew, that would have been one of the barriers to people joining was if they had it found it challenging for any reason, they wouldn't participate. And most of our target audience were older adults. And our goal was to make sure that they met with as little uh, uh, resistance or barriers as possible. So that was easy use, an easy to use interface, pleasant interface in terms of attractive aesthetic appeal,
Mhm.
um, which we were able to do with CYPHER. And then some of the key features with CYPHER, the ability for people to access the slides from previous presentations, handouts. The For us, one of our tagline is building capacity, but also creating community. So we were
Mhm.
really looking at a platform that could allow us to kind of really build that community of users and members.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so nice to have. So, how was your approach to getting stood up with building, recreating what you'd started and bringing it over into a platform and sort of formalizing it?
Yeah, so that was, I don't want to say relatively easy, but relatively straightforward. And I got to admit, CYPHER was incredibly helpful in terms of getting us started. Um, we trained a good number of staff in the very beginning. I think, went through 2 or 3 months. We had 8 to 10 sessions of training that was incredibly helpful to help us figure out how to move the pieces and parts over into the CYPHER platform. That was huge. The next so we had a good number of staff trained, and they were able to take the ball and run with it, thanks to the great training that they got. And then we added a director of Life University, and that's Jenny
That's
Pisani. So,
Jenny. Yeah.
so Jenny, take it away. You could talk about what happened after you came on board.
Yeah, so, like Remus had mentioned, we were launching with CYPHER and it began with a lot of trainings, which were super helpful. And that was like integral to learning and figuring out how to set it all up. And then beyond that, we had a natural community already happening. Like Remus talked about during the pandemic, there was a lot of online programming where we were thriving. And PSS is a multi-service organization, so there's lots of different kinds of older adults that we serve. So they existed, but we didn't have like a home base for them to return to. So that's to address the third question, how did CYPHER enable us to create a sense of community? it gave us a home where people could return to not only see the classes that were being offered, but come back to the resources there and know that that's where everything sort of lived. So CYPHER was essential for us to make that home base for our community to come back to.
Yeah. So you were really extending things from one of classes that ended the last day of class, and really creating it into more of a complete kind of learning and connection hub that they could access
Exactly.
whenever they felt like.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
It's fantastic. So when did you kind of know or feel really confident that you had really created that community? What was your like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is happening. This is what we wanted to see.
Yeah, so, it kind of was twofold because the community was organically growing from the work that had already been happening. PSS has lots of newsletters that go out to lots of different kinds of people, like caregivers or center members that we have, in-person events like that. And so as we started telling people that we had this home base, the numbers just kept organically growing. And I would say like maybe 1 to 200 new users were signing up each month. And then from there, we had all these smaller communities starting to happen naturally. We have those caregivers, and so we had caregiving events that they all flocked to. We have, a lot of health and fitness offerings for people who are homebound, like chair yoga, that really took off, that people could return to weekly for like weekly classes. And actually, through that, we're like honoring some of our instructors. Next week we have an event called PSS Honors, where we're honoring the chair yoga instructor that we have, whose weekly classes kept bringing people each week. CYPHER was really important for that. So, we have almost 1,400, more than 1,400 members today. That just naturally happened without like, a external promotion push. So it just, seeing that happen naturally, we could tell it was already happening, on its own. So that was really cool.
Oh, that's
And as
amazing.
Jenny mentioned, we didn't even, that's without promoting it.
Yeah.
This is basically just our internal audience that we're reaching.
Right. Which is incredible. I mean, that's an incredible amount of growth without a really, really big push. And you can, imagine if you had even, broader with advertising, and you could get even more. But it sounds like a nice, manageable sort of organic growth that worked for you.
Yeah.
Word of mouth. That's amazing. So, like I said, we talked a little bit about it earlier, but I mean, your population is not always seen as a tech first audience, and I'm sure a lot of people are like, oh my God, you're crazy trying to do something so technically based with this audience. What did you do? Like, what did adoption look like? What was your plan to make it as frictionless as possible? Were there any changes and tweaks that you made to really with your audience in mind?
Yeah, so, like we had mentioned, a lot of our audience were already familiar with online programming and Zoom from the pandemic. So it was, pretty natural for a lot of our LifeU members to make that transition to CYPHER because they were already used to registering for Zoom classes. And
Oh, she froze.
Yeah,
hey, I'm an educator. I fundamentally believe people
yeah.
will rise to the occasion,
Rescue.
and they did.
Yeah,
Oh,
well, that's great. Yeah, you froze for just a little bit, so it might have.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Am I back?
Yes, you
You're
are.
back.
Okay, great. So, we have our center members, we have apartment residents, we have tech instructors on site who support older adults in person to make that transition if they need some extra guidance. But for the most part, we were able to just naturally bring our members in. And, I see there were features on CYPHER that were very supportive, like the enrollment messages, which we had like automated messages go out to remind people. We all need reminders when classes are starting. So small things like that were really helpful. But on the whole, I think, the older adults that exist today are a lot more adaptable than we give them credit for. And so it was really, CYPHER is very straightforward for the users, and it allowed for us to upload really nice graphics, and the interfaces that are already built with the user in mind was, really made things more accessible for people. And I think CYPHER tries to make it as easy as possible. So that was all supportive of the adoption in general.
And I think also to Jenny's point, one of the keys was we had a lot of staff on site at the centers of the apartments, et cetera, in the community to support their members making that transition. Because the whole goal was, especially with the tech instruction, is to get people build their capacity to the point where they would be able to go online independently and take the classes. So the part of our focus was to drive people, especially the ones who are going for digital instruction at the centers, to CYPHER.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'm thinking in particular, maybe about your homepage, what people see the moment they log in. Did you make any conscious choices there to kind of appeal to your audience?
Yes. So, I worked really closely with the communications department when we first started building CYPHER to make sure that the graphics we used, the people that were represented in the images represented our diverse audience of older adults. So that was intentional to try to, create a place that felt familiar for our audience when they found our homepage, as well as each month we learned how to customize things like the outside slider portal. We promote our events in that way. We added YouTube videos and a knowledge center where people can access articles that we write that we connect to our newsletter, and that's complementing our classes. So the homepage is really customizable, and that was fun to play with and make it a hub for people to learn more.
Right. So you're communicating without requiring enrollment and things.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's really working for you? So let's start with the first one. What do you think, what have you discovered works really well to get people to come back? So they've taken their first course. What are you doing to get them to come back and take another course?
So I think fundamentally our offerings are quality, and people recognize that. We have, really great instructors, and we have really interesting content and courses that are a little different than the norm. So that I think is the beginning point, that what draws people back in is that they know that it's going to be a quality course. And then beyond that, we really do communicate a lot about, what we're doing to our audience. We have lots of different newsletters that go out to all the different communities that promote the classes. And like I mentioned, we have our knowledge center where we, have articles that we write that are inspired by a course or inspired by, what's happening in the world. So it's kind of just constantly thinking about the needs of our audience and trying to meet them there. And I think that keeps bringing people back.
Right. So they see things that sort of catch their eye.
Yeah.
Yep. And our goal is to really be there to provide the information people need to successfully manage the transitions that they're going to face as they live longer. And that could be literally anything from needing to understand health and wellness to financial planning to, returning to work. If, we're coming across a lot of individuals who retired and now they're interested in returning to work for a variety of reasons. We have a lot of family caregivers that are always looking for helpful information. So our goal is to be there and be the go-to source for all of the information you'll need to manage any of the transitions you'll face.
Wow, that's amazing. So you did reference automation and how you felt that was a real game changer. Can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, so we used automation primarily for when a member would enroll into a course. And, we have I put it in the chat, our upcoming event category where you can see everything. And some things are, a week in advance. Some things we have events that are already, into August. So sometimes people would enroll for something and then you forget about it. So It is. We spoke about how it's kind of challenging to get those pandemic attendance numbers
Yeah.
nowadays. And a lot of it, I think, is just people need to be reminded of what's happening and, what they might have signed up for. So automation really helped us to send out a message immediately as someone enrolled. And then a week before the class would take place, they would get an email, then a day before, and then we did an hour before. And once we started doing that, we saw the numbers increase, and that was really helpful.
Oh yeah, that's great. I can definitely imagine. I know if I don't get something right in my face, I will forget about it.
Yeah.
So, can I ask you a little bit about how you're using the CYPHER Agent tool and maybe what impact it's had? So let's start about how you're using it today, for course creation.
Yeah, so we've been experimenting with both the learning tool and the CYPHER
Oh,
agent for course creation, which is
awesome.
pretty cool. Yeah. And we have kind of two minds of the way to utilize the AI agents. One is for our audience, for our clients, the people we serve. And then we've recently been experimenting more with how can we use it for internal purposes, for staff training. And for our audience, we have so much content with staff that have so many different layers of expertise, materials, and trainings that they bring to the table. So we're excited to use AI for people who have things to share but haven't had a chance to format that all into a course. So that's one way. And then one of the biggest strengths is just the opportunity to use this platform for staff training. We had a meeting last week where we showcased the course creation that CYPHER offers, and staff was really excited about it. So that's how we've been really kind of experimenting with it.
Yeah, one of the things I really love actually about the CYPHER agent for course creation is that it means you don't have to know how to create a course in CYPHER. You don't need to know how to do, create an assessment or add gamification. You can just sort of let it run and add your own expertise, whether, that's in a document or editing it afterwards. So I think it really does allow you to expand who can create a course.
For
Yeah, and it
sure.
saves a lot of time.
Yes,
Yeah.
it
And a
really
good
does.
example is like we'll meet people who want to do a presentation but might not have ever done one before.
Mhm.
An example is somebody we met, somebody who was going to show people how to save all of their photos and upload their photos and videos and all their options.
Yeah.
And that individual had great expertise about what could be done in terms of options, but not necessarily in terms of how to present that information. So the ability to create a course using this tool would be, incredibly
Yeah.
beneficial for them.
Yeah, yeah, because of the structure and the pieces. So yeah, it's taking expertise and adding sort of that pedagogical wrapper around it. You
Right.
also mentioned that you were looking at the agent for learners. So just for those people who have joined who aren't clear on what CYPHER Agent for Learners does, is it's an immediate interactive conversational solution that will access answers either generally from the World Wide Web or from specific resources. So have you uploaded resources to give your community? Okay, so
Yeah.
an example.
So we've taken I've really been looking at kind of research, like new research about like brain health and connections to like Alzheimer's, and then taking like a research document, uploading that to the knowledge base, and then asking CYPHER Agent to help me come up with like a curriculum that I
Oh,
could maybe teach people about these connections, and pulling from latest research. So there's lots of different ways that you can use that learning tool. It's really interesting.
oh, that's amazing, amazing, so interesting. And then, have you found a happy balance between what's AI generated and what's human input? What do you
Yeah.
have any policies, or is it kind of a feel?
So, like I mentioned, we're sort of kind of experimenting with it now, and I think PSS, we are really a learning organization. We love playing with AI, but we always want it to be human centered for that to be the guiding force of things. So the balance that we found is to use the AI tools, but to make sure that before we share it with the public, we have our staff with all this expertise to truly look over things, fact check it, make sure that it's correct and resonates with PSS as a whole. So it's not just using AI and then putting it out into the world, but making sure that it matches with our values, what we're trying to share with our clients, and it's factual and truth based on, the knowledge of our staff.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very important pieces. Yeah. We say it's always a partnership. You don't want to just like pull the string and let it run. You do want to have that oversight, but it is still a massive time saver. All right. So,
and it's very impressive. I mean, as Jenny was saying, we had a staff meeting, and it was there were a lot of staff who came out of that, basically that show and tell of what CYPHER could do. Very excited about applying it to their own department, their own programs, their own centers, etc.
That's fantastic. I mean, because if you get those people excited about using it and actually launching their courses, like suddenly your offerings can just explode.
Exactly.
Reach. That's incredible. So let's talk about results. What are some of the outcomes that you've seen since you've launched in Life University?
Yeah, so we launched, I think technically with CYPHER about 1.5 years ago. And like I mentioned, we had a steady growth, about 100 to 200 members joining each month. And now we're over 1,400 virtual members, and it continues to grow each day. In the past year, we've offered about 275 classes through LifeU to over 8,500 participants, people who have kind of joined all these. And so, like I mentioned, we've grown all of this without even promoting it externally. So we're just now about to take it to the next level. And we were able to grow it really easily. I think something important to note too is, LifeU and PSS, it initially began as serving older adults of New York City. And now with CYPHER, we've grown it to way beyond New York City, to all over the United States. People are, joining, as well as internationally. People from other countries are joining our webinars. Yeah. And it's really, really cool. So people are seeing LifeU as like a destination now, as the go-to place for their training and information, whereas before it really was transactional. And I think another important thing to note for how this is it changed our reach and the impact is we're constantly looking for new instructors, right? Like to find a quality instructor is kind of challenging. So sometimes I find someone and now I'm able to showcase LifeU on CYPHER to show them this is what we've built. This is what keeps people coming back. And people are always very impressed. And it just shows that we are, a serious educational organization, and it helps to create those partnerships that are lasting. So it's been really impactful.
Yeah.
And it matters a lot to our partners and instructors because a lot of them, want to make sure that they're partnering with a credible organization that's going to present them effectively and successfully. And we're able to do that with this platform.
Oh, that's great. And as your organization as a whole, do you feel that that's kind of enhanced your overall purpose and direction, just for PSS USA, full stop?
I think so.
For sure.
I really think so.
Yeah.
It's allowed us more room to grow. It feels like the ceiling is not there now. We can just expand it and be more adaptable to the needs of older adults, because the world is constantly changing and their needs are constantly changing. And so to support them through those transitions, it looks very different than it did a few years ago. But now we have a place where they can return to, and we can adapt with them. So I think it's really been great.
That's for sure. And Jenny hit a great point there. I mean, the way people are seeking information, and the way they're getting their information is evolving constantly. And luckily, with this platform and with LifeView and the model that we have, we're able to do that. From offering things online to self-paced training um, to live and in person to micro learning segments where where people can just get a piece of information that answers their question. And
Right.
this is allowing us to do that.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to take a moment now. If you have any questions for Remus or Jenny, please just drop them in the Q&A so we can get to them at the end. So what's next? What's next for you? How are you imagining your expansion, so let's say in the next year or beyond?
Yeah, so we've been, conservative and a little cautious in our approach to date because we're growing steadily and figuring things out as we went along. But now we've got, this great platform built and we're really ready to take it to the next level. So we're determining which path do we want to take, more broad promotion or working like specifically with the partners. The platform itself was key and we're using CYPHER and all of its resources now. And so I think for sure, a next step is to expand the use to include staff professional development, because we, realize with the AI tools, it's perfect for creating, a lot of classes and workshops for our staff. And we've also added a service to support LifeView members through an AI-supported text-based program, which allows us members to ask us questions, and we can send information via text on their smartphones, and that has been really successful. So it always does return to CYPHER as the home base,
Right.
whatever the next steps are.
That sounds really exciting. I love that. So what would you give to another nonprofit? So, you have a very specific target of older adults, but of course there's nonprofits running on community organizations touching on absolutely everything. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, so there's a few different points I would really consider. I think first and foremost, those initial trainings with CYPHER were like really key. And I think it was important to train as many staff as possible from the beginning. So I would begin there. And then secondly, we talked about this a little bit, but as you're building the platform, work with the branding mindset. Like I mentioned, I worked with the communications department and they were a key player when we launched, because we wanted to make sure that the branding was familiar across the learning management system, because that is what made it easy for our members to transition, because they were recognizing, the logos and the colors, and so that really helped a lot. So consistent branding, I think, is really important as well. And then, once the training is finished, just jump in, and I feel like we learn the most from, doing. So, as you continue doing it, you'll learn other things and you get better at it. So, I think, there's a lot of value in a platform like CYPHER. So, and CYPHER supports the process as we go. Just earlier this week, I had a session with Helen, who was one of our first trainers for CYPHER, to learn about the e-commerce feature. So we can start charging for classes. And so CYPHER supported us throughout from beginning to the middle now.
Great expansion. Yeah. Yeah. Branding is a really important one. I'm glad you noticed that. Is that, I think it's really important to think about your LMS as a storefront, or
Yeah.
If you had, street front property and you were advertising yourself. Sorry, Remus, what were you going to add?
Oh no, I was going to agree with you 100%. It's exactly right. I mean, the branding's important, and as Jenny mentioned, making sure people saw each other in the photos that we're using. We would try to find live actual photos of activities and things like that to
Yeah.
just to reinforce that branding and who we are.
Yeah.
That was key. And I agree with Jenny. I think just jump in, because
Mhm.
it's one of those things where you really learn by doing and seeing what's next, and coming up with the questions, and troubleshooting, get those answers, and figuring out how to do things.
Yeah. And I'm also really glad to hear you had more than one person involved in your training. We were just talking about that the other day, that you one person can certainly manage this. We've had customers who have just a single person, but it's always good to have somebody that can run it so you can have a vacation or a sick
Sure.
day
Yeah.
or something. Who can handle things. That's really important. So let's talk about or is there anything you would have done differently if you had a chance to do it over again?
I think
Nothing.
just, yeah, there's
Yeah.
nothing really, just to continue to think creatively. I think that was the solution. Just to continue to adapt and don't get too stuck in like this is the way things have to be. Like learn all the different ways. Cypher is so customizable.
Mhm.
So learn those ways you can customize it and then just have fun with it.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Sure.
that is actually a really excellent advice that I think, we're used to sort of taking the courses that sort of used to take place in a classroom or a night and then just making them virtual. But in fact, there are other ways to learn, such as peer-to-peer learning or just accessing resources and then communicating or using CYPHER Agent for learners and having, a coaching session with an AI agent. So it is great
Mm-hmm.
to sort of expand because it expands your options and how you can reach people. So that's great advice.
And one of the things we would never have anticipated was the fact that we could be using it for our own employees.
Yeah.
When
Oh,
we
okay.
saw the strengths and
Yeah.
the benefits of that Cypher offered, we realized we could transition all of the trainings to Cypher
Yeah.
and LifeU and make it even a more important go-to place for everybody, including our staff.
Oh, that's great. And then like, just one solution to manage with employees and
Exactly.
external participants all in place. That's incredible. So we've got today you have shared with us a video of your journey. I'd love to play that for people. I said if you have any questions for Jenny and Rimas, please drop them in the chat. And let's just hear a little bit more about what you guys do.
Welcome to Life University. As we live longer, the question isn't just how long we live, it's how well we live. Research shows lifelong learning supports brain health, longevity, and overall well-being. Staying curious keeps us sharp. Staying engaged keeps us connected. Welcome to PSS Life University, your roadmap for lifelong learning, wherever life takes you. What is PSS Life U? PSS Life University is a free and accessible learning platform designed for real life. We offer webinars and classes on family caregiving, financial planning, creative expression, wellness, and personal growth. These aren't abstract lectures. They're practical tools and real knowledge you can actually use. Why is LifeU important? LifeU is about thriving, not just aging. Our free programming removes barriers and opens the door for more people to learn, connect, and grow. We strengthen community engagement, reduce isolation, and create spaces where people stay active and informed. LifeU delivers meaningful programming that supports contract goals and drives measurable impact. What do you gain from LifeU? You're not just taking a class. You're building confidence, strengthening your mind, and connecting with a community that keeps growing. Join us today. Now is the time to invest in learning, connection, and community. Join us, partner with us, or support the work. Stay curious, stay connected, keep learning. Visit www.psslifeu.org to explore classes and opportunities to get involved.
Oh, that's great. I love seeing that. I love seeing all those smiling faces, people learning
Yeah.
new things. That was awesome. Well, I want to thank you both so much for joining us today. Congratulations again on being a CYPHER Customer of the Year. You've clearly well deserved. You've done some amazing work, and we're just delighted you came to speak to us today.
Thank you
No,
so
thank
much,
you.
Caitlin.
Thanks. Bye. And thank you everybody for joining today. We will be sending out the recording soon.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.